In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about FP1 and FP2 in Canada. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name's Martin and I'm a specialist technical coach and mentor for open formula drivers. Like I say, in this video, we're going to go through the whole thing. But first, I just want to start with chicanes and a little bit of theory, because as we came off the Imola Grand Prix, I didn't see the best technique in chicanes. The cars were also a little bit clumsy trying to ride the curbs with the correct technique. So I just want to brush you guys up on theory. If you guys came to the live stream, you'll be fully up to date with this, but I want to give you the context for what I think the best way is to drive chicanes, because we have a lot here in Canada. And then I want to show you what Jacques Villeneuve said in Imola down at the Variante Alta chicane. Verify everything, just make sure we're on the right track. Let's jump over to the whiteboard now. I'll show you guys how to take chicanes. Alrighty, hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. I've got the Canada track map here and just a picture of the 6 and 7 chicane. If I just draw the racing line in green, what I want the drivers to do is really get into the first entry curb. I think that's the golden key and golden ticket to chicanes. You've got to unload the inside front tire and help yourself make contact with that first entry curb. So what that means is this tire here, the left front tire, you want to unload that going into a left-right chicane so that it gives you the most compliant, most comfortable experience across that first entry curb. How do you do that? Well, you just slowly wind the steering wheel on initially, and then bang, you've got to give it a really big armful of lock to get this tire unloaded. Unloaded means, it hasn't got weight on it. It's slightly off the ground potentially, and the other side of the car has more weight, more load coming across to it. So then you make nice compliant contact with the first entry curb. That helps you shortcut the racetrack, but crucially, I think most of the benefits are going to come from the exit, because you've just got nice straight line traction. You can open up the steering wheel. You don't have to worry about this curb and making contact with that curb, which is going to unsettle the car on the rear on traction. So you don't want to go near that one. You want to go around that one, just focus on getting out of the chicane. So the first entry curb is key. Unloading the inside front is key. Getting good straight line traction is key as well. Now, Jacques Villeneuve was down at the Variante Alta chicane in Imola and echoed my sentiments. Let's have a listen to what he said now.
There's Jacques Villeneuve, trackside for us at turn 14. Over to you, Jacques.
Yeah, Variante Alta, if you use names like we used to in the past. And it's an exciting place to be, because you really see the drivers at work, the aggressiveness, the precision in driving, and there's an art to going through these chicanes. The old-fashioned kind of chicanes that were put in place to remove a straight line back in the day. There's curbs, and the way to take a curb is very specific. You want to be able to hit the curb when your inside wheel is slightly offloaded, so you don't get a big jolt. And the drivers who manage to do that, they don't bounce up that much. That means that their tires stay on the ground, and they all avoid the second curb, because that's when you have to get on the power. You don't want the car to be bouncing there. So you need a car that is very, very directional, that changes direction quickly, that is precise. And that's how you can go quick through these corners. And you see which driver is super aggressive and trusts his car. And they manage to just go through these curves. I've seen some cars today, the Red Bull, the front end was bouncing up a lot, very harsh. And some other cars, the Haas particularly, would go over the curb as if there was no curb. So either the setup of the car, the driver managing to just unload the front wheel a little bit when he hits that curb, manages to land in the second part of it, and then direction change and get on the gas. A lot of time can be made here, but so easy to make a mistake, because you carry a lot of speed and momentum into the corner, and sometimes the rear wants to come around just when you do the direction change, because you've been maybe going a little bit of understeer. You don't want to understeer in these kind of corners. You lose 2 or 3 tenths super easily. You also hear some drivers downshifting 1 gear more. That's to slow the car down, to put maybe a better front end, to make the car turn around. But the cars that are really well balanced don't need to go down that gear, and it's just super smooth. As I said before, when you see them go well, it's as if there wasn't a curb. Back at you.
Beautiful, happy days. So now that we understand how to take chicanes, we're going to be following this story closely this weekend. Who's doing it well with the correct technique? Which cars can ride it? How well do they unload the inside front? And what are going to be some of the struggles and challenges? Now, I also said in the live stream, if you came along, excuse me, it's very important every year that you have a look at the curbs, have a look at the chicanes, see what's changed year on year, because you might spot some differences, and you got to get down on the ground, feel them, look at them at eye level, have a look at their profile. In the live stream, I was talking about the difference between 2024 and 2018, 2019. I'll just bring up a picture for you guys now to be able to show you that. So here is an example of what we could be looking at. For example, the turn 1 entry curb, Sebastian Vettel riding this one nicely. It's quite jagged, quite rough. But then in 2024, this was last year, different paint, different colors. Is it slightly different in profile? I'm not sure. Again, this is what your track walk is important for. And what I called out as well on the live stream is this piece of grass just missing over here. That's potentially an escape for you, Sebastian. If you just want to get your left front to run over that, that's going to help you with your entry into turn 2 as well. So this is the sort of stuff that we were talking about in the live stream. And we did get a few shots to have a look at in the first practice session. So let's bring up the 2025 track now. So this was the first and best shot that I got of the turn 1 entry curb. There is a lot of lap time here, down here, if you can ride this curb, but I don't think it's possible, to be honest. I just think that the drop off between the curb and then this red piece of asphalt, I just think it's a little bit too aggressive. I mean, if you've got your left front in this area over here, then that means that the floor is going to really cop it along this very rough, jagged, serrated edge. So I think that one's a no-go from what I can see here. But notwithstanding that, like George, if you're looking at George here, there is still a little bit of space for him to climb up. Ideally, you want to be apexing here, and the left front should be, you know, on that interface between curb and cement over here on the left as well. So that's what I'm looking for, and that's what I'm looking at. You want to go as high up these curbs as you can, and then you just want to feel them out and start slowly in the first practice session. Now in the live stream, I was talking about these big orange ones as well, potentially being a bit of a problem because they're too big. Again, we need an update. We need to have a look at them. As I saw them around the track, these ones don't look as bad. I'm not as worried about this as I would be at the turn 1 interface there. This looks fine. I'd be very comfortable and very happy for a modern day Formula 1 car to jump over this, no problem. And this is down at the final chicane, turn 14. So these are in the final chicane, turn 13 and 14. These orange things are also present at 8 and 9 as well, guys. So look, I think no problem with these. I was a little bit concerned that they might be too high. I think we're good to go, good to start smacking them. Now, Canada, Montreal being somewhat of the street circuit, as I understand, it's sometimes used during the year. I'm not fully up to date with which parts are used, which ones are not. But what that means, guys, is the walls are close and a mistake is going to cost you. So again, the street circuit rule, like you guys know from the Monaco Grand Prix, the street circuit rule says just build yourself a weekend, play your way into the crease, clean the track up a little bit. A mistake is costly, might cost you a full session, maybe 2. And I thought that, you know, Charles Leclerc's crash was an example of what not to do. Now, a lot of people were talking about how he locked up the front right tire going into turn 3 and how he potentially had the opportunity to get out of it and save it. I think, yeah, that's all true. I agree with all of that, but it's a little bit hard in the heat of the moment when you've locked up the front tire and you've just got to make that split-second decision that caught you by surprise that you didn't expect. I would go back a few steps and say, hang on. Street circuit mentality. Why are we so close to the edge or the limits of adhesion 10 minutes into FP1? For me, that's the bigger low-hanging fruit failure from Charles. Not necessarily that he didn't make the right decision to abort or try to save it, because at that point, like, it's too late. Like, you're already in trouble at that point. You've got to do the preparation, the street circuit mentality. So what does that mean for Charles? Well, he missed FP1 and FP2. It's not a good start to your weekend, Charles. So it's definitely not worth it for like, what are we fighting for? 1/10 of a second in the first part of FP1? Like, it's not worth it. You've just got to build up to it a little bit, play your way into the crease, clean the track up, get a feel for the curbs, you know, start to warm the muscles up, get the coordination and memory happening, and then build your confidence throughout the weekend. Start to hit these chicanes and curbs really nicely later in the day or maybe tomorrow. And you want to just build that confidence right up to Q3 in qualifying. Charles failed to do that. Now, who I thought was the best driver out there today in the session, I thought Lando was doing excellent. He just started to feel out the curbs very gently in the first instance. He was taking all of the correct lines and techniques to everything we spoke about, the first entry curb, and just the way he was going on them in the first instance looked calm, methodical, professional. I just like the way Lando was driving out there. He did have a little bit of rear instability issues on a few different corners around the racetrack. We're going to get onto those as well. But I just thought that Lando was, yeah, he had a good day. He built his way up, started to feel the racetrack in the right places. And I think he set himself up for a good weekend so far. So let's talk about some of that rear instability now. Now, what is rear instability? Well, on the brakes, combining with the steering, as you turn and rotate the car into the corner, then there's the potential for the rear to break away. I'll bring up a few videos now, a few examples, just so you get the understanding of it. And then we can potentially talk about some of the solutions to that problem as well. So this was George Russell, I believe, rear instability down at 6 and 7, the entry to 6. This is Lando on the entry to 8 on the front wing. You will see the movement in the car. Kimi Antonelli, the same spot as George, into turn 6. He comes on the radio and says here, yeah, I just locked the rear. I'll come on to that in a second. And Hamilton, you can't talk about rear instability without talking about Lewis Hamilton. He's such a late braking entry merchant that he does ask a lot from the rear of the car. Here's an example of that where he's combining a lot. Combining means combining brake and steering into the corner. And then you're susceptible to such a thing. And this has been Lewis's problem, not only since he's joined the Ferrari, but since he's had this generation of car, 22, 23, 24, and now 25. Reinstability here into the final chicane. And reinstability again where Lando had it into 8 and 9 as well. Have a look here. I'll just pause it because we're going to try to get on to the solutions in a second. But if I just go back for a sec, you'll see Lewis make a little change to the brake balance, which is one of the tools you could use to help alleviate some of this rear instability. BBAL 59 flashes up. So Lewis is making a brake balance adjustment into this 8 and 9 chicane. Now, I'm not sure whether that was forward or backwards. All I know is it flashed up BB 59. I can't see what it was prior, whether he pushed it up, brake balance forward, or down, brake balance backwards. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's one of the ways you can try to solve this. But notwithstanding that, he still gets a bit of rear instability on the entry to 8 and 9 as well. Cool. So what are some of the things you can do to resolve for it? Well, it's really important to understand at which phase of the corner it's happening, firstly, and what type of corner it is, and how the gears or engine braking would be involved in that as well, and what the steering condition is at that time. So yes, the easiest solution would be brake balance forward and start by trying that. But it looks to me like it's not on the initial contact. And I always think the brake balance is more responsible for the initial contact, not necessarily what's happening when you're trailing out of the brake pedal and starting to add that steering, which I feel like was where a lot of the reinstability was happening on that combined entry phase. Again, not necessarily the initial contact. I think with Kimi Antonelli, it was down at turn 6, that particular example. But a lot of the other ones like Lando's, Lewis's, George's as well, I just feel like we're a little bit later. So that speaks to now what's happening with the downshifts, the engine braking. Remember when you downshift and you smash those downshifts quickly, yes, it can help give you braking capacity, braking potential, but engine braking also acts at the rear of the car only. So potentially there's an option for you there to delay your downshifts. So brake into the corner, turn, and then once that speed and everything is wiped off and you're into the corner, quickly smash your downshifts and get into the correct gear. I'm exaggerating here, but that's one option, as opposed to pulling back high and hard with the RPM generating a lot of engine braking. Then that's one potential solution. I always feel like in this case, the most elegant solution is brake migration. So as you come out of the brakes and turn on the steering wheel, where does the brake balance migrate to? Does it migrate to the front or does it migrate to the rear? Again, because I feel like this is happening in the mid-entry phase, then I would say, well, try to migrate that brake balance forward as you come out of the brake pedal. That's going to help stabilize the rear as well. Because if it's already a little bit unsettled or on edge, the last thing you want to do is have that brake balance migrate towards the rear and ask it to brake as well. Obviously, you're going to get over rotation in that case. Now, from the driver's point of view, again, everything I've just spoken about is driver tool related, engine braking, brake balance, brake migration, downshifts, and so on. But you just want to do less combining as well. And this is where Lewis Hamilton, it kind of handcuffs him in a way, because Lewis is a late braking, fast entry combined merchant. He'll brake late, hard into the corner, and he'll combine that with the steering to get the entry speed that he likes. and the Ferrari is not allowing him to do that, I would go as far as to say this set of regulations is not allowing him to do that either. So what does he need to do? He needs to separate those elements a little bit, brake more in a straight line, and when the braking's done, then turn into the corner. Again, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he needs to have less overlap between the brake and steering. Or like in the first instance, try to hold on to that technique because it's a strength of his. Try to change the engine braking, brake migration, brake button, try to work with it. But if none of those tools work, that's when you've got to head over and start to look at your technique and say, well, am I combining too much, carrying a little bit too much speed here on the entries? So I thought I'd highlight that to you guys as one of the issues that pop up today, rear instability on entry, and some of the solutions that you can try to do to help you get out of trouble there. Now, I wanted to talk to you guys about the driver race engineer relation as well. Being a driver coach, I've spoken about this a lot on this channel. So in the Kimi Antonelli example, when he locked the rears on the entry to turn 6, he came on the radio in a really kind of like urgent tone. Like, I locked the rear into turn 6. Like, it was, okay, you locked the rear. Like, it's just like, who cares? It just, that's what practice is for, to find out whether the fronts are the limitation, the rears are the limitation. You lock a rear, it's not a big deal. Like, so he came on the radio in a very urgent manner, like, I locked the rear, help, help. And then Bono comes on the radio and says, yeah, we'll look into it. We'll look into it. I think from both sides, Antonelli's side and Bono's side, didn't seem like a very professional outfit to me. You lock the rear, like, big deal. Go through some of the checks that I said before, like push the brake balance forward a few clicks and then try again into turn 6. That's the easiest thing to do. And then again, maybe the next step will be delaying your downshift slightly. And then maybe the next step will be going back to the garage and seeing what you can do with the brake migrations, heading into there, migrate forwards. I thought the urgency from Antonelli was unnecessary. And then for Bono to say, we'll look into it, like, there's nothing to look into. Rear locking is like a very normal part of driving and vehicle dynamics. All Bono had to say was, yeah, Kimi, just whack the brake balance forward, give that a go. Like, just start there with Kimi. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be an analysis paper written about this sort of problem. So I thought that was a little bit strange to hear that dynamic. Then Lewis Hamilton, when he was having his rear instability issues into the final corner, turns 13 and 14, he comes on the radio and says, yeah, look, I need some help into the final corner. Give me some options. Again, I think with Lewis and Ferrari and race engineers in general, they're probably not the people you want to be going to. Like, I wouldn't be asking Riccardo Adami for braking stability help into the final corner. It's just not going to work, Lewis. What you need to do is what I said, just play with your tools. That's what practice is for. Think for yourself and problem solve for yourself and dig yourself out of trouble. And I say all that because I feel like we've got a generation of drivers now where all they want to do is just drive. All they think they need to do is just push the brakes, the throttle, and turn the steering wheel and just drive as quickly as they can. But there's something to be said for problem solving, digging yourself out of trouble, understanding your tools and how they work, and understanding in which situations you can leverage those tools and change them corner by corner for your advantage. Michael Schumacher was famous for this in just changing the brake balance in 2005, 2006, but he was the first to just change it corner by corner because he thought there would be an optimal brake balance for each corner. Yes, there is. But now, and I forgot to mention this one as well, the differential is also another tool that you can carry with you. The entry diff in this case, or the off throttle differential as well, can help control the rear stability in the entry phase as well. So the diff is something I didn't mention before, which is, yeah, very powerful tool, and controlling the diff at different phases of the corner. So I'm saying all that to say there are so many tools that you need to learn and understand and play with and dig yourself out of trouble, because by the time you phone the race engineer, they go back to base, they run a bunch of calculations and then give you a recommendation based on the data. That's all lost in the roundings for me. That's all going the long way about it. You just got to be proactive. And if you can get your hands on a driver coach and work with them, then I think that's the easiest solution, just to be able to understand the tools, understand in which situations they're applicable, and dig yourself out of trouble is just the easiest way. So for Antonelli, like, I wouldn't come down so hard on him. The guy's 18. He's still got a lot to learn, obviously. For Lewis, I think at this point, like, play with your tools and try to understand how they work. Nico Rosberg was famous for beating Lewis Hamilton by finding these marginal gains. I would go as far as to say they're not that marginal anymore. This is in some ways the only way you have to control the race car around a few chicanes and a hairpin in Canada. So that's what your practice session is for. It's not just for the car setup to try new front wings or new floors or get a read on tire wear. And that's for the drivers to also find solutions out there as well. I think that's lacking as at 2025. Now, some other big challenges came in the other technical corner, the hairpin. Remember, if you're new to the channel, 7 technical corners: chicanes, hairpins, S's, double apexes, and then your 3 long corners: constant radius, increasing radius, and decreasing radius. We got chicanes and hairpins to talk to this weekend. If I just jump over to the track map, I'll show you where that hairpin is. So you've got all your chicanes, chicane, 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 chicane. So 5. And then you've got the hairpin on the top left of your track map. Very technical corner. You need to be precise with the hairpin. It all starts with the braking and your brake pressure. But then it's when you introduce the steering as well. You just don't have as many options in a hairpin as you do in a long corner. For example, a long corner of constant radius, if you brake a bit late, it's fine. You can play with that. You can add a little bit more pressure, downshift a bit quickly, do a later rotation, get through the corner that way. If you brake a bit earlier, again, you can play with your rotation point throughout the phase of the long corner. In a hairpin over here, you can't do that. You've got to be very precise with all your inputs, the braking, the turning, and the timing and pressures of everything as well. So a lot of drivers having struggles in the hairpin as well. Let's have a look at those together now. So this was Max in the first instance, just missing and going a little bit deep. Some brilliance here from Max, because if you look at the steering wheel, he just turns a bit and realizes, nah. Then he waits. And then now he gives it a bigger armful of lock, because he knows if he does the combining piece, what we spoke about before, it's not going to work. So he gets the braking done and then adds the steering. I might just go back if you guys missed that because it was a little bit quick. Just watch the way Max controls his hands here and wait to add the steering. That's an example of separating the driving elements that I spoke about in order to not get rear instability. Lovely piece of driving by Max Verstappen. Good awareness as well. So some other hairpin challenges. I think Lando popped up. Yeah, and again, this is an example of combining the inputs, combining the brake and the steering on entry, creating rear instability. So we're down at the hairpin now. We're seeing these sort of struggles as well. Of course, Lewis had his issue here as well. Fernando Alonso broke a little bit too deep and then combined and locked up the front. That's fine. That's a lot safer than locking up the rears. Again, I always advocate for, if you're going to lock up any of the tires, locking up the front is so much safer than locking up the rears. So start with your brake balance forward and bring it back from there is the way to go. Lando again with the rear instability. This time I think he shot a little bit deep. Should have done the max thing here. And yeah, he started to turn in fairly early. So I think all of them are going fairly deep and with too much brake pressure. But there's a variety of issues. Braking deep, combining brake and steering on entry, rear instability, front locking, rear lock. Like there's a lot going on here, and it's a pretty straightforward corner, but it is one of the 7 technical corners as well. So again, your migration, your downshifts, your differential, your brake bias, your pressure, everything. There's a lot to talk about in just a fairly straightforward hairpin. So I thought I'd call out some of the issues that the drivers were having and how they navigated and got around them. Okay, let's talk about Lance Stroll's crash that happened, I believe, in FP2. And it was pretty much everything that we said about the 6 and 7 chicane. If I just jump over to the whiteboard, taking the first entry curb here to make your life easier on the exit, Lance did exactly the opposite of that. So we'll bring up the crash now and you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about. Here it is. He goes around the first part. And what that means is now there's a lot of steering plus throttle application going on here. So you're either going to brake traction or you're going to understeer. In this case, he understeered. So this now, the right-hand steering there, that's too much, right? That's not necessary. I'm talking about potentially opening the steering wheel on the exit, not necessarily holding steering lock on the exit. So I think that's the reason why. Look, good for him that he understeered instead of oversteered. I think if he oversteered, it would have done a lot more damage. It's a lot easier to fix the front left and the suspension and all that. That's fine. Those are just parts. But yeah, that's an example of bad technique and exactly what we're talking about. He's completely missed his target, which is on the left here. This whole red area should be climbing over all of that. Actually, I'll bring up an example of what good looks like in turn 6 in just a second. But yeah, it, like I said before, it really helps the exit here. And this is where he's picked up a bit of understeer, potentially a bit of dirty air as well from the stake in front, who's not going that quickly, but these cars are so sensitive to that sort of thing. So yeah, he's missed this part. And that's for me where the whole thing has come undone. Like I say, let me bring up a picture now of, say, Vettel in 18 or 19. I'll show you how it should be done. So this is Sebastian Vettel, I think it was 2018, his pole lap, if I'm not mistaken, but this is the same corner where Lance completely missed this part. Sebastian getting very up on it. His right front is just barely inside track limit, so this is perfect. And like I said, the advantage of this is it just makes the final part a little bit easier. Your car's more mid-track, in a better position to be able to just take that right-hander, start to add the throttle and open the steering wheel and just focus on a nice clean exit. Whereas Lance being that step more to the right-hand side of this picture makes you a very acute angle into the second part, turn 7 of this chicane. Again, that's bad technique, and that's where the dramas all started. All right, so FP1 results on the screen in front of you. Look, I'm not reading too much into these at this point. I mean, McLaren were trying new front wings. Leclerc obviously had his accident. There was some other stuff going on. Max was top, but the Williams do look strong as well as the Mercedes. I think Ferrari could be strong if they just resolve for the entry instability. I think all the cars have opportunities out there. It's just going to be driver-car combination. Again, like I've been saying on the channel for a while, the trend now is moving more towards driving technique than it is about cars per se. Like I think the McLaren, whilst it's a great car, a lot of its advantages this weekend in terms of front grip, which is its biggest advantage, not necessarily going to be seen here at this sort of track because there aren't many long corners like we had in Spain. It's more about driving technique and compliance over the curbs. So we're going to see who, as the weekend unfolds, who's got the upper hand with that. But I think Williams look strong because they're good in that area. And I said in the live stream as well, those who did well in Imola, I think should have a good chance because Imola's all chicanes as well, right? So like, yeah, I think it's all to play for. There's a lot of opportunities out there. FP1 was a mixed bag therefore as well. So it was topped by Verstappen. I don't see Verstappen as being a contender this weekend for pole, but look, you can never write off Max Verstappen. Come on, guys. Like, he's so good in so many areas that you can never write him off. But I've never thought that chicanes were his biggest strength, you know? I've always thought the tracks like Belgium, those fast flowing, high downforce tracks where Max can keep it flat. If you guys saw my Spain analysis, Max took the final corner in Spain flat when very few others, including the McLarens, did as well. So Max's strength, I feel like, is more in the high speed than it is the sort of Mickey Mouse curbs and chicanes and stuff. I'll be interested to follow that story throughout the weekend and just see how he navigates those challenges. But anyway, he topped the session with the two Williams and the Mercedes followed. Let's have a look at FP2 now as well. Here are the FP2 results on the screen in front of you. So it was topped by Russell, Norris, Antonelli, Albon. So we're getting a picture that the Mercedes are strong. Obviously, the McLarens are going to be strong and the Williams are strong in there as well. So I think that is going to be our top 6 or 7. Alonso sneaking in there is probably the outlier. Good job by Fernando. He's mega around here. And this is pretty close as well. So 12-1, 12-1. And then a bunch of 12-4s as well. So it will be tight, I think, in qualifying as well. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. But I think, yeah, Mercedes, McLaren, and Williams as well can potentially spring up a surprise in there as well. Mercedes for their top speed, 326. That's better than anyone until we get to Piastri. So yeah, Mercedes are generally strong with traction and top speed. But like I said, guys, I think it's more going to be about that technique in the first entry curb and the compliance on the contact there and who can get their foot down fastest, earliest, and hardest. That also helps give you a little bit more straight line speed as well. So that's what I'll be looking for come tomorrow. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something from it. If you did, please leave a comment in the comment section below. That helps the channel moving forward. And if you like this type of driver coaching analysis, then subscribe to this channel. I'll be giving out more tips this weekend. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.